Imagine investing billions of dollars, mobilizing armies of workers, and envisioning iconic landmarks that would stand the test of time. But instead, these massive construction projects became cautionary tales of human error, engineering hubris, and extremely bad consequences. Join us in this video for a shocking ride through 15 world's most unbelievable construction disasters. The Champlain department store. It was originally planned as an apartment building, but after construction began, Lee Jun, the future chairman, decided to change the design into a department store. In the rush to prioritize business over safety, key support columns were removed to make space for escalators. When the original designer protested, saying this would make the building unsafe, Lee Jun fired them. Things got worse when he added a fifth floor for a roller skating rink or restaurants, pushing the building's limits even further. Despite clear signs of structural issues, such as cracks appearing, Lee and his management team ignored the warnings. One particular day, the cracks became much more serious, but instead of evacuating the building, the management kept it open because there were more customers than usual that day, and they didn't want to lose money. This greed turned out to be a deadly mistake. By 5 p.m., the fifth floor ceiling was sinking, and by 5:52 p.m., loud cracking sounds signaled an impending disaster. Though some workers tried to evacuate the building, it was too late. The roof caved in, and the entire south wing of the building collapsed into the basement, killing 502 people and injuring 1,994 others. The disaster caused $216 million in damages, which is approximately $478 million today. On top of this, the unethical management had to pay compensation to the victims' families. Initially, the families asked for $361,000 each, but were offered just $220,000. The total payout reached $300 million, which included all of Lee Jun's personal wealth. In the end, his decision to cut corners in construction cost him everything. Even so, many would say it wasn't enough to make up for the lives lost. Keep watching because this is just the beginning. What's to come will leave you completely shocked. Death ray debacle. The Vidara Hotel and Spa, which opened in December 2009, is one of the many luxurious hotels, spas, and casinos along the Las Vegas Strip. It cost a staggering $8.5 billion to build. Despite the massive price tag, the Vidara ended up with a pretty shocking issue. With all the money put to the project, all the design should be perfect and ironed out, right? Well, not quite, but it is now referred to as the death ray. People started to report that they were leaving the hotel with severe sunburn after taking a visit to the pool. For about 90 minutes every midday, the building's curved glass surface reflected the sun's rays onto a specific spot in the pool area, creating intense heat. The design unintentionally turned the hotel's glass into a giant parabolic reflector, focusing sunlight onto a 10 by 15-foot hot zone on the pool deck. The heat was strong enough to singe hair and even melt plastic. This design flaw was a direct result of the building's concave shape, which instead of just looking sleek and modern, acted like a magnifying glass. You'd think with a building that cost $8.5 billion, they'd have avoided something as bizarre as creating a death ray by accident, but apparently not. For anyone with a flair for supervillain-style hotels, the Vidara might be appealing. But for the rest of us, it's a reminder that even the most expensive designs can have glaring oversights. That's a lot of money for a hotel that could have been a little less dangerous. The Aon Center. The Aon Center, originally called the Standard Oil Building, had a bit of a glamorous start that didn't quite pan out as expected. Designed by an expert, the building was covered in Italian Carrara marble, a stunning, luxurious choice that definitely made it stand out in Chicago's skyline. The material, while beautiful, was thin and not suited to the building's scale or Chicago's harsh weather conditions. Just a year after the disaster struck, slabs of marble began falling from the building's facade. One of these marble pieces even crashed into the roof of the nearby Prudential Center, which was both alarming and embarrassing. It became clear that the marble couldn't handle the wear and tear that a skyscraper endures over time. The cracking and falling marble led to the decision to completely reface the building, ditching the marble for something more durable granite. Redoing the entire exterior of the Aon Center with granite came with a hefty price tag over $80 million. It was a costly lesson in how luxury materials don't always guarantee long-term stability. Lotus Riverside Complex. The Lotus Riverside apartment complex in Shanghai had a pretty stunning failure. It consisted of 11 rectangular buildings, each 13 stories tall. But one morning, something so unexpected happened. One of the buildings just toppled over onto its side as if someone had tipped it like a toy. What's even more shocking is that it fell straight over without hitting any of the other buildings nearby. If it had, the damage could have been catastrophic, like a massive domino effect that would have likely brought down several more buildings. The collapse wasn't because of a problem with how the building itself was designed or constructed. It was actually an issue with the foundation it was sitting on. Right beneath the building, workers had been digging up the earth to make space for an underground garage. The excavated soil was then dumped into a landfill near a creek, and that's where things went wrong. The water from the creek seeped into the ground, mixing with the soil and turning the foundation under the complex into mud. Without a solid base, the building couldn't stand, and down it went. What's striking here is the sheer scale of the near disaster and how it could have been so much worse. The walkie-talkie. The walkie-talkie skyscraper in London was meant to be an architectural marvel. Standing tall at 5.25 feet, its slightly concave design made it a standout. It was praised for its unique look, but soon it became notorious for something completely unplanned. It accidentally turned into a giant heat ray. The concave facade, which gave the building its signature look, also acted like a massive magnifying glass. As the sun's rays hit the building, they were focused and reflected down onto the street, and the results were pretty extreme. The heat generated by this reflection was enough to scorch the pavement, fry doorways, and even shatter tiles. In some cases, the heat reached an incredible 243 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt parts of cars parked nearby. Imagine walking down the street minding your business, only to have your car start warping from the heat or finding the ground beneath your feet feeling like a skillet. One infamous case involved a Jaguar that was parked in the death ray zone. It melted down to its body frame. It's wild to think that such an iconic building could cause so much unintended destruction just because of its shape. In the end, developers had to add shading to the building to prevent it from focusing sunlight so intensely. Kai Kagara Bridge. The collapse of the Kai Kagara Bridge, also known as the Mahakam Second Bridge, on November 26, 2011, was a tragedy that shocked Indonesia. Just 10 years after its completion, this bridge, meant to connect the towns of Tenggarong and Samarinda across the Mahakam River, collapsed, resulting in the deaths of at least 20 people and injuring 40 more. At 2,329 feet long, with an 886-foot suspension section, the bridge was designed to be a grand structure, reminiscent of the famous Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. It wasn't just an important transportation link, it also carried a sense of pride, being the longest suspension bridge in Indonesia at the time. Sadly, this iconic status couldn't save it from disaster. The collapse raised serious concerns about construction standards and safety regulations in the country. For the people crossing that bridge on that fateful day, it was a nightmare. Unlike the Golden Gate Bridge, the Kai Kagara Bridge clearly lacked the same engineering excellence and attention to detail. This event wasn't just a bridge failure, it was a failure in oversight and infrastructure planning, costing the lives of innocent people. For the families of those who died or were injured, this was more than a lesson. It was a painful loss that could have been prevented. The biggest construction blunders are still to come. Stay tuned. Aquadom. The Aquadom at the Collection Hotel in Berlin was an incredible sight. A massive cylindrical aquarium that stood 25 meters tall, filled with 1 million liters of water. It housed over 1,500 tropical fish from 100 different species, and it was truly the heart of the hotel. What made it even more unique was the transparent elevator running right through the center, allowing guests to ride up close to this stunning underwater world. Maintaining such a huge aquarium wasn't just about keeping the fish safe, it also had to be cleaned and checked regularly to ensure the safety of hotel guests. But on the morning of December 16, 2022, disaster struck. The entire Aquadom suddenly burst, unleashing 1 million liters of seawater into the hotel lobby and out into the streets. The impact was so intense that it destroyed the hotel's entrance and even registered on local seismographs as shock waves from the collapse were detected. Thankfully, it happened early in the morning when the area wasn't crowded. Only 2 people were injured, and they were quickly taken to the hospital. But authorities were quick to point out that if the collapse had occurred during busier hours, the outcome could have been much worse, possibly even fatal. Investigators believe the likely cause was material fatigue. The large temperature difference between the warm water inside the aquarium and the freezing cold outside on that night may have weakened the acrylic panels. The stress from these temperature fluctuations likely caused the structure to fail. This reminds of the risks involved with maintaining such complex attractions. Skyscraper on stilts. A skyscraper that almost became the stuff of nightmares. It all started with architect William Le Mesurier, who had a bold vision for a towering structure in New York City. But there was a problem. The ideal site for the skyscraper was already occupied by a Lutheran church, which wasn't interested in relocating. Instead of bulldozing the church, Le Mesurier came up with an innovative solution. He built the skyscraper right above it. So, the Citigroup Center became a 59-story giant, standing on stilts, with the church tucked underneath it. Now, here's where things get tricky. A skyscraper on stilts is already a risky concept, but it got worse. Le Mesurier opted for bolted joints in the building's construction instead of the much stronger welded joints. This decision, although cheaper, left the structure vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. In fact, engineers later realized that a strong enough storm could cause the building to collapse, potentially killing up to 200,000 people. Did they sound the alarm and warn everyone about this looming disaster? Not exactly. Instead, the team decided to secretly reinforce the structure. They worked under the radar, welding all the joints together, while hoping no catastrophic storm hit before they finished. The tower never collapsed, but had it done so, it would have been one of the most tragic architectural failures in history. Seongsu Bridge collapse. The collapse of the Seongsu Bridge in Seoul, South Korea, on October 21, 1994, was more than just a structural failure. It was a devastating moment for a city that trusted the stability of its infrastructure. This 3,800-foot bridge stretched across the Han River, linking the Gangnam and Seongdong districts. For years, it stood as a critical connection for the bustling city. But on that early morning, everything changed when concrete slabs fell into the river below due to a suspension structure failure. What makes this tragedy even harder to accept is the cause: improper welding of steel trusses. Something that should have been checked and double-checked turned into a fatal error. The consequences were heartbreaking. 32 lives were lost and 17 more were injured. Families were forever changed, and a sense of betrayal rippled through the city as people began to question how such a catastrophe could happen in a place as developed and modern as Seoul. The original plan was to repair the Seongsu Bridge. After all, it was a vital part of the city's daily life, a familiar route for thousands. But as inspections revealed more weaknesses in the structure, it became clear that patching it up wouldn't be enough. So, in the end, the decision was made to tear it down and start fresh, to build a new bridge that would visually resemble the old one but be stronger and safer. By August 15, 1997, the new Seongsu Bridge was completed. On the surface, it looked like the original, but for the people of Seoul, it represented something far deeper. It reminded them of the lives lost, the lessons learned, and the importance of prioritizing safety over speed or cost-cutting. Hard Rock Hotel collapse. In the heart of New Orleans, the Hard Rock Hotel project promised to weave itself into the city's vibrant tapestry of nightlife and music. Mohan Kailas, the founder of Hard Rock, was filled with optimism as he envisioned a venue that would honor the city's rich traditions of music and cuisine. He confidently declared that the establishment would soon become a favorite for both locals and visitors. However, as fate would have it, his vision crumbled literally and tragically. Construction kicked off with high hopes, and at first glance, everything appeared to be progressing smoothly. The skeletal structure began to rise, and anticipation buzzed in the air. But at 9:12 a.m. on a fateful morning in October 2019, disaster struck. The top floors of the unfinished hotel collapsed, a catastrophic event that claimed the lives of 3 construction workers and left 30 more injured. Survivors recounted the harrowing experience of being trapped beneath the debris. One worker described the horror of finding himself surrounded by twisted metal and concrete. The weight of the collapse also destabilized a nearby crane, forcing the evacuation of adjacent buildings as emergency services feared further disaster. Streets were cordoned off, strewn with rubble, creating a chaotic and frightening scene. As questions swirled about how such a tragedy could occur, it was clear that the reality of the situation was far more complex than Kalis had imagined. A video surfaced, allegedly shot by a construction worker, showing feeble support beams bending under pressure. In the aftermath, engineers assessed the wreckage and discovered that the beams supporting the 16th floor were an astonishing 300% overstressed, revealing a collapse that had been waiting to happen. The reasoning behind using such inadequate support beams painted a troubling picture. To accommodate higher ceilings in the penthouse, the construction team had opted to reduce the width of key support beams on the 16th and 17th floors. This compromise made those beams perilously weak. Rather than fortifying them with additional vertical supports, they were left to bear the brunt of excessive weight that included heavy construction materials and even a swimming pool hoisted onto the roof just hours before the disaster. To add to the chaos, the building inspector responsible for overseeing the project had failed to conduct any physical inspections. Instead, she submitted reports from afar, signing off on safety measures without ever visiting the site. Shockingly, just weeks before the collapse, she approved a layer of concrete for the roof without confirming its safety. West Mississippi River. The collapse of the West Mississippi River Bridge on August 1, 2007, was a tragedy that shook Minneapolis to its core. This steel truss arch bridge was not just any bridge, it was the 3rd busiest in the city, carrying 140,000 vehicles daily over the Mississippi River. For years, it was a vital part of the city's infrastructure, connecting lives and businesses. But on that fateful day, during the evening rush hour, it came crashing down, taking 13 lives and leaving 145 others injured. The thought that a design flaw could have caused such a disaster is unsettling. People trusted this bridge with their lives every day, never imagining it would fail them so catastrophically. The National Transportation Safety Board launched an investigation, and the findings were disturbing. It wasn't just one thing, it was a combination of poor design choices, increased loads over the years, and bad timing. The thinner gusset plates at just 5 inches weren't built to handle the weight the bridge had been carrying. Adding to the problem, 2 inches of concrete had been added over time, increasing the static load by 20%. On top of that, heavy construction equipment was placed right on the bridge's weakest point at the time of the collapse. All these factors came together to create a perfect storm. The aftermath was devastating. Families lost loved ones in an instant, and survivors were left with not only physical injuries, but emotional scars. The city mourned, and the entire nation watched in shock as the tragedy unfolded. In the days following the collapse, the Minnesota Department of Transportation moved swiftly to start plans for a replacement. The St. Anthony Falls Bridge, designed with more robust safety measures, was completed just over a year later. But even with a new bridge in place, the pain of that day lingers. The NTSB's final report in November 2008 confirmed what many feared. This disaster could have been prevented if the design had accounted for the changes over the years. Champlain Tower South, a 3-building complex in Surfside, Florida, housed over 130 apartments, 80 of which were occupied. It stood as another beachfront condominium, but one with a crucial flaw. Its parking garage was designed to act as a structural support for the entire building. This decision would prove catastrophic. In 2018, residents began noticing signs of a serious issue. Water was infiltrating the building, corroding the reinforced steel in its structure. Despite reporting the problem, no immediate action was taken. It was a disaster slowly unfolding, yet ignored. Over time, the corrosion worsened, and by April 2021, it had reached a critical point. A $15 million repair plan was finally approved, but work never started. What made Champlain Tower South particularly vulnerable were not only these internal structural issues, but also external forces at play, eroding ground-level supports, land subsidence, and even suspicions of construction corruption. The building wasn't just aging, it was sitting on fragile ground, a literal disaster waiting to happen. The night of June 21, 2021 changed everything. Without warning, the building partially collapsed, resulting in one of the deadliest structural failures in United States history. The collapse wasn't just physical, it symbolized the collapse of trust in safety systems and oversight. Only 35 survivors were pulled from the rubble, while many others remained trapped beneath, and the nation held its breath in grief. The financial toll was staggering as well, with the collapse incurring about $1 billion in compensation for losses. And to think, all of it could have been avoided with $15 million in repairs. This tragedy has left an indelible mark, not only in Surfside but nationwide, as it called for sweeping changes to building regulations, particularly for coastal areas. Safety protocols have since been strengthened, ensuring that something like this will hopefully never happen again. But for the families of the victims and the survivors, the damage is irreparable. We've started scratching the surface, more shocking construction mistakes ahead, and guess what's next? The Jeddah Tower. The Jeddah Tower, once set to redefine skylines and expectations, had an impressive height of 3,281 feet, surpassing the Burj Khalifa by a striking 280 feet. It was envisioned as Saudi Arabia's crowning architectural jewel, a symbol of ambition and innovation. Designed to accommodate over 700 residential and hotel rooms across 106 floors, the tower promised modern luxuries, including the world's fastest double-deck elevators, capable of soaring up to 32 feet per second. It was set to be a marvel of engineering, showcasing what humanity could achieve when pushing the boundaries of design and technology. Construction kicked off in 2013, backed by a hefty budget of $1.23 billion. Just to put that into perspective, the project was set to use enough steel to build 8 Eiffel Towers and enough concrete to construct 6 Hoover Dams. Everything seemed to be moving along smoothly until it hit a wall after reaching the 63rd floor. The abrupt halt in progress was not just a logistical issue. It felt like a dream deferred for many who had high hopes for the tower. What made the Jeddah Tower particularly exciting was its innovative design, which included a unique system to withstand high winds and seismic activity. The tapered structure was meant to reduce wind load, and an array of tuned mass dampers would help stabilize the building. These advanced engineering solutions were not just features, they were assurances of safety and resilience, making the construction standstill all the more disappointing. It felt like a betrayal of the vision that so many had worked hard to realize. On top of that, the tower was meant to lead the way in sustainable architecture, incorporating energy-efficient systems and water recycling technologies. The aim was to set new standards for eco-friendly skyscrapers, a goal that resonated with many in an era increasingly focused on sustainability. However, following the years, everything changed dramatically. A wave of anti-corruption purges swept through Saudi Arabia, leading to the seizure of billions in assets from numerous businessmen, including the key figure behind the Jeddah Tower project. Since then, construction has remained stalled, and while the consortium funding the tower has expressed intentions to complete it, a confirmed timeline seems like a distant dream. Will it one day rise to fulfill its original purpose, or will it remain a monument to unfulfilled potential that we both don't know? Glass bridge blunder. Glass bridges in China became a huge attraction in recent years, pulling in tourists with their stunning views and transparent walkways. By 2016, more than 2,300 glass bridges were constructed across the country, including the largest one of them all, built at a staggering cost of $48 million. At first glance, these structures seem like engineering marvels, combining thrill with beauty. But beneath the surface, serious safety concerns have emerged. The turning point for public perception may have been the popular show Squid Game, which highlighted the terrifying dangers of glass walkways. Suddenly, what once seemed like a novelty began to feel like a disaster waiting to happen. These bridges are made from 50 millimeters thick glass, supported by steel girders and reinforced cement, which should be strong enough. To boost public confidence, Chinese authorities staged dramatic events, smashing the glass with sledgehammers and even driving cars across the bridges to prove they were safe. But these flashy demonstrations couldn't hide the fact that in the rush to build these tourist attractions, important details were overlooked. And then came the accidents. One of the most serious incidents occurred at a glass bridge in Jilin province. A tourist found himself stranded after several glass panels shattered during a violent storm with winds reaching Minetti 3 miles per hour. Can you imagine the terror of being stuck on a fragile structure with shattered glass beneath your feet and nowhere to go? The man had to be rescued and was rushed to the hospital, not just for physical care but for psychological counseling as well. The entire resort was shut down, and the incident became a glaring example of the flaws in these structures' designs and construction. In 2019, Chinese authorities took a bold step, closing all glass attractions in certain provinces due to the growing safety concerns. Millions of dollars in construction investments were wasted as these tourist sites. The reality is, these bridges were not built to withstand the natural forces they faced, like high winds or severe storms. The man trapped on that bridge in Jilin wasn't just a victim of faulty glass, he was a victim of poor planning and inadequate regulations. His experience was very traumatizing. Hotel of Doom. The Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, North Korea, dubbed as the Hotel of Doom, is a glaring symbol of a project that went off the rails. At the start, North Korean leaders envisioned it as an iconic structure that could rival world-famous landmarks like the Eiffel Tower or the Statue of Liberty. Following the years, they broke ground on the Ryugyong Hotel, ambitiously planning for it to rise over 1,000 feet, host more than 3,000 rooms, and feature 5 revolving restaurants that would offer panoramic views of Pyongyang. They even set a grand opening date. But as the years passed, that deadline came and went, and the hotel was nowhere near finished. The exterior framework was finally done, but the grand vision began to crumble, much like the country's economy. North Korea's closed borders, along with its lack of tourism appeal, meant that the hotel was doomed from the start. Without an influx of tourists to fill its rooms, the very purpose of the building became questionable. The interior was never completed, and the hotel was left a hollow, windowless giant, standing as a stark reminder of North Korea's overreach. Efforts to salvage the project have come and gone. In a bid to at least make the building look appealing, the exterior was clad in metal and glass, and LED lights were added to create a nightly light show. Sure, it might look better now, but that doesn't change the fact that the hotel remains fundamentally flawed. It's still just an empty shell, unfit for its original purpose. And the flashy exterior doesn't hide the fact that the project was a colossal failure. What's often overlooked is just how monumental the task was from the beginning. Constructing such a massive building in North Korea, a country with limited access to advanced building technologies and materials, was always going to be a huge challenge. And then there's the cost of an estimated $750 million. That's about 2% of North Korea's entire GDP, spent on a building that has never been used. It's hard to wrap your head around such a colossal waste of resources. Imagine what that money could have done for the country's struggling population instead of being poured into this unoccupied monument of futility. Which of these construction mistakes shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.